We are talking The Pumpkin Man from 2023. And this is directed, co-written, produced, edited, cinematography by, and even starring one Mr. Ryan Sheets. So this is one of those movies where there is a singular driving force, creative force behind it, as tends to be the case with many a low-budget genre film. And maybe he should team up with Todd Sheets to create a horror film about a kind of air demon, and they should call it Two Sheets to the Wind. Bit of a B-movie joke there, sorry. Anyway, The Pumpkin Man. What is that about? So I'm a huge fan of kind of Scarecrow type horror films, although technically speaking it's not a scarecrow, it's a similar kind of visual. And the story here is a low-budget kind of slasher-style movie where a group of teenagers decide they're going to try and read this passage from this occult book that summons this demon, and they're doing it for, you know, a laugh ultimately, but unwittingly actually conjure up this Pumpkin Man style demon that's wanting to ultimately kill them. And what'll happen? Well, you'll have to watch the movie and find out. So this movie is the feature-length version of a number of short films that Ryan Sheets had made previously as kind of, you know, anthologies or little kind of webisodes, proof of concept, and ultimately has culminated in this kind of feature movie. Let's discuss. Now, it is a low-budget film, so, you know, as always, we kind of have to have our expectations in check. And what can we say that works in this movie's favour? I think the Pumpkin Man himself makes for a fun horror antagonist. He looks cool. I really like the kind of the mask and the kind of the makeup. It's actually Ryan Sheets as the Pumpkin Man. He's actually playing the Pumpkin Man along with a cop. I will say I don't know how I would have put him on stilts, because it looks like a guy on stilts rather than he's meant to be like super tall, but it kind of looks like it's just a guy on stilts, or Ryan Sheets on stilts. But anyway, but other than that, I think the actual kind of the visual representation of this kind of like this demonic pumpkin creature looks cool. The mask looks cool. And they've kind of given him a kind of Freddy Krueger-esque kind of style personality, where he has this kind of like cruel kind of sort of sense of humour in the way he kind of talks to his victims and things like that. So I kind of quite like that. The movie, I have to say, feels a little bit like a kind of a Goosebumps style kind of horror. So like a horror for younger people is the best way of describe it. I don't think it's necessarily made as that, as there are a few kind of F-bombs here and there, but it has that sort of younger person style kind of aesthetic to it. Our main characters are all kind of young, and it just feels a little bit kind of like Scooby-Doo-esque, if that makes sense. So if you don't mind your youngsters hearing a few F-bombs and obviously a little bit of low-budget gore, then I think this is kind of a movie which has that sort of tween, early teen kind of feel to it, and I think that's probably the best audience for a movie like this, providing they don't mind a low-budget film, of course. I think there are some technical elements here that are quite fun. Ryan Sheets, as I've mentioned, co-did the kind of the cinematography, and the cinematography is not all that bad here, I have to say. And the movie, despite having a low budget, does feel like it's, you know, relatively kind of well put together. I mean, again, Sheets has made a variety of shorts about the Pumpkin Man, so he's had a little bit of kind of test runs really kind of about this kind of concept, and I think shows some kind of confidence as a kind of certainly a director on the technical elements at the very least. I think the cast do an okay job. I don't think, well, put a pin in there. I have one issue with that, but generally speaking, I think the cast do an okay job making for distinct characters at the very least. I think our main girl, you know, she's kind of like a high sort of hyper all the time, and she's kind of like makes her a quite unique kind of leading sort of character. Like she's kind of like a manic pixie, I think the term is, certainly here in the UK. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that term outside of the UK, but a manic pixie is the best way I would kind of describe her as a kind of character, which makes, again, it's a little bit of a different kind of template. So the acting is okay. I think it's okay for this kind of low budget kind of style of movie. There's a couple of reasonable gore shots here and there, nothing too kind of like over the top. It's done with practical effects. Again, it's okay. It's nothing spectacular, and you know, it's an interesting kind of mythology that they've kind of built up about this kind of like this demonic sort of curse and witches and things like that. There are a few kind of Easter eggs and tie-ins to Cheech's kind of previous work. So what doesn't work in this movie? Now, let me just refer back to the acting here, because I did say put a pin in it. One of the bugbears I have with horror movies in general is the real lack of depictions of fear. Now, you could say this movie has a lighter tone. It's not meant to be a kind of more dramatic kind of style horror film, but and I can kind of live with that to a point. But man, I mean, we have our characters see right up and close and personal this kind of pumpkin man trying to deliberately scare them, and they are just kind of like, oh my god, and then straight away they're okay. I mean, it's such a sort of like typical, I wouldn't say this is a Hollywood film exactly, but a Hollywood style of kind of depictions of fear.
Michael, what the hell is going on in there?
Nothing.
It really bothers me, and I'll always use this as a kind of like a way to try and explain what I'm talking about. If you've ever seen a prank video where someone's jumping out at someone, presuming it's not set up, and how people kind of absolutely kind of like keel over in shock and run away and things, that is how fear actually looks like when things like this happen. Not like it does in this movie, or a lot of horror films. But this one really, I think, makes it more of a, people are so unfazed by this kind of like this creature. It was to the point where it was a little bit ridiculous. And let me talk about something else which I found a little odd in this movie. Now, this might just be the aesthetics as it kind of seems to me. But our main character is this young girl, and she looks young. Now, I'm not sure how old she was. I did try and find out for this review, but I couldn't find out. But she looks about 15. Now, I'm assuming she's a little older, because I noticed she had a tattoo on her wrist, but she looks around 15. And her sort of guy she's flirting with, kind of stroke boyfriend, looks about 20. So it looks, I have to be honest with you, it looks a little bit creepy. She's like tiny, she's very demure, pixie-like, young looking. He's got kind of like, you can see stubble and things like this. I'm sure their ages in real life probably close together, but then as it appears in this film, it looks a little creepy. I'm not gonna lie. I'm just saying, that's how it kind of looks to me on screen. I'm sure that's not the case in real life, just how it looks. There you go. What else can we say? So, I think the film has this lighter tone, as I've said. So those of you who want more of a dramatic, more of a scarier film, more of a film that's going to give you genuine creeps, you don't get it from this film, because the film has this lighter kind of tone, this kind of like, as I say, a Goosebumps film, Scooby-Doo-esque kind of like aesthetic to it. So it feels like it's made for younger people, even though it kind of, it doesn't seem to be, at least. The actual plot of the movie isn't anything you haven't kind of seen before. It's somewhat of a kind of typical kids resurrect a monster and then have to try and defeat it. I think the movie is a little bit too keen on advertising this, what is clearly a real life haunted attraction. I almost felt like this was an advert for this kind of, what is probably some type of haunted attraction in this, wherever it was filmed. because there's a lot of like lingering shots of this kind of like this theme park attraction, whatever it is, to the point where it feels like this really feels like product placement, to be honest. Like I've said, the actual Pumpkin Man itself, I quite like the aesthetic. I think I would have lost the stilts. It kind of looks like someone was walking around stilts. So again, it kind of undercuts a little bit. There is some really kind of like obvious, just sillier moments in the movie. Like, for example, at the very beginning of the film, we're led to believe that this Pumpkin Man is this kind of like local legend, and it's been legend for like over 130 years or whatever it was. And there's this like missing grimoire about how to summon him, and these kids like immediately find it. It's just under a few like pine cones and a bit of grass just under this tree, and like it's not damaged, it's never been found before. It's like, it's just like so like. It just seems to be like the script to me was the weakest part of this film, because the actual story is very kind of like, it's alright, it's just very basic, and then there's like sillier moments, just like that, and the kind of like, let's say, the depictions of fear. It just seems to me like a cartoon. This feels kind of like a cartoon. The budget does show through on occasion, where it is just kind of a little bit, cheap looking from time to time, and there are some elements, again, we're meant to believe there's this fear attraction, this kind of theme park, but when it needs to be, there's no one around, when there's lots of people around, in the introduction and stuff, but where our customers, our cast always seem to be on their own in particular moments. So I feel like it's somewhat workmanlike, to be honest. The movie is okay. It's an okay kind of slasher film, but I really don't think it stands out in any particular kind of way. It's workmanlike. It's somewhat kind of generic, but not bad. It's watchable if you don't mind a kind of a lower budget, kind of slasher movie. I think there were some ideas here that could have been tweaked and expanded upon, certainly on the script level, that I think would have made this film stand out a little bit more. I think the tone could have been a little bit more focused about, is it a kid's film or isn't it? What are we doing? So to me, it's kind of like a 5 out of 10. It's a sort of average, low budget slasher film. Nothing special, but not a terrible watch. Kind of watchable if you don't mind a kind of lightweight horror film. Have you seen The Pumpkin Man? Please let me know what your thoughts are, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time.